Alright, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today's topic is very important topic of international relations, political science and history for the students of the entire world. And today's topic is what were the political, economic, social and religious conditions of the people of the world before World War I and II, means from 1800 to 1945. The political, economic, religious and social conditions of the subjugated people were worse beyond description. The period before the World Wars I and II was moribund period. The great empires of Asia, Africa and South America were conquered, destroyed and plundered with impunity. There was not a single state in the whole world that could be called a stable state. There was not a single state in the whole world that could be called a stable state with authority. There was not a single society based on principles of justice, equality and fairness. The societies and rules were erected on the principles of force and power. The European nations since 12th century perpetrated innumerable cruelties upon the innocent people of Asia, Africa and America. The European nation succeeded in spreading and imposing their ideological and political sphere through war and execution. The process of nature gained its own pace. The European people persecuted African black people, Asian and American people for centuries. The colonial powers had made the world like the pre-Islamic period of world. People had no economic, political and religious rights and liberty. The colonial powers of Europe created political instability, economic disparity and social decadence. The subjugated people were deprived of even basic rights of rights of life. They had no voice in the making of policies affecting them. They had no share and voice in the administration. Not only that, but they were denied of due share in jobs and services or even in other fields. They were forced to live as slaves socially. There was an unbridgeable gap between the ruling and ruled classes of the society. The apartheid system was forcefully introduced. Social distinctions were rigidly imposed. The doors of educational and professional development was closed for the people of lower strata. The ruling class looked down upon the people and called them by insulting and ridiculous nicknames. The social disruption had reached its highest peak in the world. Taxes and other duties had multiplied manifold. Though the subjugated people already were groaning under innumerable hardships, there was but one reigning passion: to amass wealth by every conceivable means from the occupied lands and their native people. The social horizon was extremely gloomy. The subjugated world had suffered severely in the general decline caused by overtaxation, reduced commerce and neglected agriculture. The people were deliberately kept in darkness so that they could not see the dawn of new civilization. The people were immersed in the darkness of an abject state. People of the world lay sunk in a night of barbarism more awful and horrible than that of primitive savage. life. They were butchered when they raised voice against brutalities. The system of suppression was in full swing. People of occupied territories did not enjoy the basic tenets of politics due to the control of European monarchies. The colonial rulers encouraged one faction against the others. They divided the local population in factions and pitted them against each other, hence becoming easy prey to conquer. The principle of divide and rule. The colonial powers created political instability, economic disparity, and social decadence. The economic conditions of Europeans were becoming prosperous at the cost of entire humanity of the world. Their living standard and wealth was increasing at an enormous speed. Poverty in Africa, Asia, and South America was increased to that alarming extent that after passing one century, it is not decreasing despite rigorous efforts by the United Nations and its agencies. Poverty remains the main issue of today's world. The social issues like poverty, social evils, social degradation, unemployment, debt, and low level of economy are due to the past irrational policies and brutalities of European powers. South Asia, once the cradle of great religions and mighty civilizations, had languished and absorbed all the features of social and moral degeneration. The British destroyed entire South Asia in all fields of life and perpetrated innumerable brutalities on the people in general, especially the Muslims. The Hindus of South Asia were forcibly turned to the Christianity. Religiously, European nations were forcibly imposing Christianity by providing incentive of various natures to lower strata of the people of South Asia. Their brutalities and repression forced the indigenous people to rise against them. The South Asian people started various movements under various leaders to deter the brutal Europeans. The Europeans crushed these movements by force and massacre, killing thousands of innocent Hindus and Muslims of South Asia. The Arab lands were occupied and the Ottoman Empire was disintegrated into pieces and created many small countries with perpetual crises. Jews were brutally butchered in Europe. They forced to leave their huts and homes. Consequently, the Jews were wandering all over the world for social, cultural, and religious identity. They migrated to the United States and eventually made the United States a powerful state in the world, economically, politically, and socially. Their persecution eventually culminated in the creation of a state Israel in the hearts of Arab land. Colonial rulers were notorious all over the world for plunder and greed. Hypocrisy, deceit, treachery, selfishness, and cruelty had become the normal traits of their nature. Wine, gambling, fornication, and other forms of vices were promoted, and no laws were there to curb these vices. The world entirely changed after the political revolution in the United States of America on 4th July 1776. US ideology traveled and influenced the political philosophy of world. France embraced revolution on 14th July 1789 and other countries followed the wave of democratic values in Europe but kept depriving the people of their colonies of entire world. The War of Independence started in the United States against the European colonial powers which further changed the scenario of the world. The economic greed of European countries compelled them to occupy and subjugate more and more lands in countries of Asia, Africa, and South America. Europe was engulfed in overt and covert rivalries. No one knows who is with whom. The politics of grabbing more land continued during the entire 19th century and eventually brought destruction and misery not only to the people of Europe but also to the entire world. The insatiable greed of Europeans culminated in the world wars. The USA during that period followed the policy of isolationism and looked down on Europe's politics. Europeans' clandestine policies and diplomatic activities immersed them along with the entire people of the world into destructive flames of both world wars. The Great Depression left an indelible and most devastating impact and increased human suffering in all sectors in the world. The Great Depression was a severe worldwide economic depression between 1929 and 1939. The economic impact affected the entire population of the world. The Great Depression or Global Economic Depression was the longest, deepest and most widespread depression of the 20th century. The disastrous effects of Great Depression lasted many decades. Devastating effects were seen in both rich and poor countries, with falling personal income, prices, tax revenues, profits and prices. International trade fell by more than 50% and unemployment in the world increased to 35%. Countries around the world were hit hard, especially those dependent on heavy industry. Construction was virtually halted in many countries. The agricultural sector suffered as crop prices fell by about 60%. The deteriorated socio-economic religious conditions compelled the population of the world to wage nationalist movements against European powers. Nationalism became a slogan for liberation and freedom from the clutches of European powers. The nationalist movements started by the subjugated people around the world against colonialism, and Europeans added fuel to the fire and spread the fire in which mighty empires were burnt to ashes. The subjugated and persecuted people waged valiant struggle and guerrilla wars to attain salvation and freedom from the clutches of conquerors. The enemies of one another helped the subjugated nations and people to defeat their enemies. The deteriorated economic and social conditions were encouraging the success of communist revolution in Russia and China and other parts of the world. These were helping and encouraging these nationalist movements in the world against capitalism. The United States of America also forced and coerced the colonial power to liberate these countries. Humanity was suffering under the agonies of oppression. The lower strata of society were disgruntled and wanted salvation. The spirit of nationalist movement worked as a tsunami for colonial empires of the world. Thank you very much. Wish you good luck. Take care of yourself and others. See you in next lecture.